Someone crossed you. Maybe it was subtle, a favor unpaid, credit stolen in a room full of people who watched it happen, a betrayal dressed up as a misunderstanding. And you let it go. Not because you didn't feel it. You felt every inch of it. You let it go because you didn't know what else to do, because everything you considered felt either too small or too explosive. Because part of you thought, maybe I'm overreacting. You weren't overreacting. You were undertrained. Here is what nobody told you. The moment you let that go, you sent a signal, a clear, readable signal, and they received it. The mechanism at work isn't cruelty. It isn't even malice. It's calibration. People constantly test the boundaries of what you will accept. When you accept something you shouldn't, the boundary moves. It doesn't reset on its own. You have to move it back, deliberately, strategically, with no anger and no explanation. That's what this is about. Not revenge, not escalation, not a fantasy about them getting what they deserve while you watch from a distance. This is about something far more powerful, becoming the kind of person they cannot afford to cross again. Comment below. What's one moment you let something go that you shouldn't have? Under 5 words. You'll know it when it comes to you. If this is already landing, stay close. It gets sharper. Principle 1. The calibration game. They crossed you because they're a bad person. They crossed you because the environment allowed it. Machiavelli's entire philosophy rests on one uncomfortable foundation. Most people are not driven by virtue or malice. They are driven by opportunity. When the environment rewards a behavior, even passively, by failing to punish it, that behavior repeats. This is not cynicism, it's mechanics. When you were crossed, something in the environment told that person, this is permitted here. It may have been your silence. It may have been your speed to smooth things over. It may have been the audience that witnessed it and also said nothing. The environment spoke, and the message was, proceed. You're in a meeting. A colleague takes credit for a project you built from scratch. They do it casually, almost reflexively, as if they've forgotten your role or never registered it. Everyone moves on. You say nothing. You tell yourself it's not worth the energy. 3 months later, the same person does it again. Bigger stakes, same audience, same silence from you. You didn't just let it happen twice, you trained it. Most people respond to this situation with internal chemistry, frustration, resentment, the private satisfaction of knowing the truth. They're waiting for the world to correct itself. They're waiting for the right moment, which never arrives, and while they wait, the other person operates without consequence. Stop diagnosing their character. Start redesigning the environment. The question is not why did they do this? The question is, what condition made it possible and what changes that condition? Just to make sure the record is accurate, I built the framework we're discussing. Happy to walk through it. Not aggressive, not wounded, factual. Delivered once, in the room, with no apology in your voice. You speak once, clearly on the facts. You don't repeat it. Repetition signals desperation. One statement, measured and clean, does more than a confrontation. The room recalibrates, not dramatically, but the next time someone is deciding whether to move on something that's yours, your name now carries a different weight in that calculation. If that just shifted something, this channel is built for exactly that. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. Principle 2. The signal you're sending. Think about the last time someone minimized you in public. Not a screaming match, a quiet diminishment. They talked over you. They dismissed your idea without engaging it. They excluded you from something you should have been part of. What did you do? If your answer is anything that involved managing their comfort before your own dignity, you failed the test. Jung called it the persona, the mask you build to manage how others receive you. For many people, especially those raised to keep the peace, the persona becomes a kind of permanent apology, a preemptive softening, a visible signal that says, "You can push here and I will absorb it." The problem isn't that you have a persona. Everyone does. The problem is when the persona has become the primary thing people encounter, and it broadcasts vulnerability instead of gravity. Scan your last week. How many times did you qualify a statement before you made it? How many times did you say, "I might be wrong, but," or "This is probably a stupid question," or "Sorry to bother you"? Every preemptive apology is a signal. Every unnecessary softener is a signal. You are broadcasting the floor of what you'll accept before anyone has tested it. Remove qualifiers, not from everything, from things you know to be true. The timeline is off by 2 weeks. Lands differently than "I might be wrong," but I think the timeline might be a little off. Both contain the same information. One of them creates a different kind of person in the room. Before I give you the next principle, I need to tell you about someone, not a famous philosopher, not a case study from a book, someone real, someone you probably know, because you might have been him. His name was Daniel, an ordinary guy, the kind of person who laughed easily and listened even easier. When you talked, he made you feel like the only person in the room. His friends used to say, just go to Daniel. Daniel is always there. That was the problem. 2 a.m. phone calls. He answered. Emergency favors. He showed up. Someone couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't cope. Daniel was the first call, every time, without question. His birthday came and went. He sat alone in his apartment, no calls, no messages, just him and the silence he had spent years filling for everyone else. He told himself, people are busy. He believed it too. That's the thing about people like Daniel. They extend grace so naturally, they don't even notice when it's only flowing one direction. Then, one week, Daniel had a bad week. Job interview fell apart. Rent was due. Nothing catastrophic, just the ordinary weight of a life not going right. The kind of week where you need someone to pick up the phone. He called the person he had answered for 100 times. It rang. Then cut. He called again. Rang. Cut. A message came through. Bro, busy, later. Daniel put his phone face down on the table. He lay on his back and stared at the ceiling. No tears. That would have been easier. What came instead was something quieter and worse. A hollowness. The specific, airless feeling of realizing I could disappear from the city tonight and the gap I leave would close by morning. He didn't do anything dramatic that night. He got up, walked to the window, looked at the city lights spreading out below him. All those lit windows, all those people inside them, living lives that had nothing to do with whether he was okay. And he thought, I exist, but I don't register anywhere. That sentence, that quiet, undramatic sentence, that is the most dangerous thing toxic relationships actually do. Not the arguments, not the betrayals, not the moments you can point to and name. The slow erasure. The years of being endlessly available until one bad night you reach for the people you gave everything to and you find nothing there. And the worst part is, You're not even surprised. You saw it coming for years. You just kept hoping you were wrong. Daniel wasn't broken that night. He was finally, completely honest. And that honesty, that recognition, was the first night he stopped answering calls he should have let ring. Not out of cruelty, out of self-preservation. That is not a dramatic story. That is a Tuesday night for more people than you know. That is what happens when you spend years being available to people who have never once asked, "How are you actually?" Not a breakdown, not a crisis, just a man standing at a window realizing his presence doesn't register anywhere he has poured himself into. If you have felt that, even once, this video is not about strategy anymore. It is about deciding that your presence will register, starting with how you carry yourself, starting with what you stop absorbing, starting tonight. Principle 3, the frame problem. You cannot win a game designed to make you look small. Think of the board, not the chessboard, a courtroom. Every interaction where your credibility, competence, or dignity is being contested is a courtroom. And every courtroom has a frame: who belongs here, what the rules are, what counts as evidence. When someone crosses you, they are often not attacking you directly. They are constructing a frame in which your response options are all losing ones. Defend yourself and you look fragile. Stay silent and you look complicit. Escalate and you look unstable. This is Machiavelli's core insight on power. He didn't tell the prince to be the strongest person in the room. He told him to control the conditions under which power is exercised. Frame control is not what you say. It is the structure inside which what you say gets heard. When you argue inside a frame designed to shrink you, you are playing someone else's game on someone else's board with someone else's pieces. Every move you make inside that frame confirms the frame's validity. The move is not a counter-argument. The move is to step sideways, calmly, completely, and rebuild the frame from your position, not from anger, from precision. When you change the court, they must either follow you onto your ground, where you have the advantage, or abandon the exchange. Either outcome serves you. You might be feeling the urge to close this, to save it for later. Don't. Because what comes next is the part most people don't get to, the specific mechanics of how you rebuild the kind of presence that makes someone genuinely reconsider what they did, not through confrontation, through something they cannot counter, cannot dismiss, and cannot take from you. Principle 4, the silence reformation. You've been crossed. The room knows it. Maybe the person who did it knows it too. They're watching you from across the conversation. Here's what most people do. They fill the space. They make small talk to reduce the tension. They laugh at something that isn't funny. They perform normalcy. Because the silence feels like evidence of damage. It feels like losing. Here's what they're actually doing, handing over the narrative. The composed person does nothing, not passive nothing, strategic nothing. They allow the silence to settle, and in that silence, the room does the accounting. Every second you don't scramble to smooth it over is a second the other person has to sit with what they did. You're not punishing them with your silence. You're simply refusing to rescue them from the weight of their own action. They make themselves easier to be around. They prioritize the comfort of the person who wronged them over their own equilibrium. They become smaller to make the situation manageable. Green's social strategy is built on one principle that most people skip past. Presence is currency, not charisma, not dominance. Presence, the refusal to disappear. When you fill every uncomfortable silence, smooth every rough edge, and manage everyone else's discomfort, you are spending your presence on other people's comfort. You are becoming a service provider in situations that demand you be a force. Stop rescuing the room. When someone has done something that deserves to sit in the air, let it sit. You don't have to be cold. You can be entirely calm. But composure is not the same as accommodation. Composure means you are steady. Accommodation means you are still managing their experience instead of your own. They will find your new stillness disorienting. They will try to pull you back into the old dynamic, the one where your discomfort was available for them to read and manage. When it isn't there, they have to reckon with themselves. That is not a small thing. Principle 5. The long game and the reputation you're building. Illusion. Making someone regret crossing you means making them feel it immediately. Reality. Making someone regret crossing you means becoming someone they remember differently years from now. Here is where most people's thinking collapses. They want a sharp, visible consequence. Something the other person feels in the moment. A public corrective. A confrontation that lands. But sharp, visible consequences are fast. They resolve. They allow the other person to position themselves as the wronged party, to tell a story about you, to turn the moment into a grievance that follows you rather than them. The slow consequence has no counter-narrative. When you stop being predictable, when you stop being the person who absorbs quietly, who overlooks reliably, who can be counted on to keep the peace, you create a category error in the minds of people who counted on your accommodation. They cannot react to something they cannot name, and what they cannot name, they cannot dismiss. I watched this happen once with someone I knew professionally. A person who had been openly diminished by a colleague, publicly, repeatedly, said nothing for months. No confrontation, no visible reaction. What changed was not what they said, it was what they stopped doing. They stopped volunteering. They stopped softening. They stopped arriving early and leaving late in ways that made other people's work easier at the expense of their own recognition. Within a year, the room had recalibrated entirely around their absence from those dynamics. The colleague who had done the diminishing had to reckon with someone they could no longer read. That is the long game. You are not building a response. You are building a reputation. And reputation is not built in moments of confrontation. It is built in patterns of behavior, sustained over time, that eventually become the thing people orient around when they decide who to test and who to leave alone. One question, asked internally before every social interaction: am I behaving like someone who can be moved? Not cold, not hard, not theatrical, simply unmovable, rooted. Someone whose response to pressure is steadiness, not flexibility. The most powerful version of regret is not the kind you cause in a single confrontation. It's the quiet accumulation of a person watching someone they underestimated become someone they cannot dismiss. But here's the part that surprises people. It doesn't feel like victory, not the way they imagined it. It feels like clarity. You stop needing them to acknowledge what they did. You stop replaying the moment to construct a better version of it. You stop waiting for the apology that would make it even. Because by the time you've done this work, the thing they did has shrunk, not in significance, in power over you. It no longer defines how you move through a room. It no longer surfaces when you're about to speak. It no longer lives in your chest like unfinished business. That is what Nietzsche meant by self-overcoming, not conquering others. Conquering the part of yourself that needed their recognition to feel whole. Most people get this wrong. They think overcoming means dominating. What it actually means is that you require less from the external world because you've built something internally that doesn't collapse when someone refuses to see it. The regret, when it comes from them. Because eventually, they encounter the version of you that no longer accommodates what they once took for granted. And in that encounter, they feel the absence. They feel the gap between what they expected and what is actually there. You don't produce that gap by punishing them. You produce it by outgrowing the version of yourself they were exploiting. You are not the same person who clicked this. One more thing before the system. The last video on this channel goes deeper on why you allowed this in the first place. Not the strategy, the root. YouTube card is right there. If you're serious about this work, that video is the other half of this one. Everything in this video is a concept until you anchor it to a daily behavior. Here is the system that makes it real. What I'm about to give you took years to distill. Subscribe if you want the rest of the series. 1. Morning prime, 2 minutes. Before your day starts. Before email. Before the phone. Before the first interaction. Ask this. Who do I want to be in the room today? And what does that person not do? Not what they achieve. Not how they perform. What they do not do. What they no longer absorb. What they no longer smooth over. The negative space of a powerful person is as important as the positive. 2. The in-moment anchor. When you feel yourself about to accommodate someone who has not earned it, use this, not out loud. Internal. A single sentence between the stimulus and the response. The gap is small, but it is where the power lives. 3. The 7-day constraint. The evidence rule. This week, treat every social interaction as evidence. Every time you qualify something that didn't need qualifying, evidence. Every time you fill a silence you should have held, evidence. Every time you smooth something over before it was asked of you, evidence. You are not judging yourself, you are auditing. What does the evidence show about the signals you are currently broadcasting? At the end of the week, you will have a clearer picture than any personality test could give you. 4. The alliance audit. 2 questions. Answer them honestly. Who in your life benefits from my reactivity? Who respects me more when I am composed? The answer to the second question is your board. The answer to the first question is your blind spot. 5. The evening review. 2 questions, 1 correction. Where did I hand my composure to someone else today? What would the version of me I'm becoming have done instead? 1 correction only, a single behavior change for tomorrow, not a list, 1 thing. Precision over volume. The people who truly never get over being crossed are the ones who handled it badly. They escalated too soon, or they absorbed too long, and they spent years explaining themselves. To others, to themselves. In a story that required the other person to be the villain to make sense. You don't need them to be the villain. You need to become someone the story can't be told about anymore. That is what Machiavelli actually meant, not ruthlessness. The ruthless person makes visible enemies. They leave marks. What he described, the effective prince, the one who remained, was someone who had learned to make the environment do the work. To construct conditions in which the right outcomes became inevitable without the drama of force. You are constructing conditions, quietly, in every interaction, in every signal you refuse to send, in every silence you choose to hold instead of fill. If you made it here, you're not like most people. Subscribe. You're exactly who this channel is for. Write down one signal you've been sending that you're ready to stop sending. One line, no explanation needed. You're in the middle of a conversation. Someone moves against you. And this time, you don't fill the silence. You don't qualify what you know to be true. You don't smooth over the edge to make it easier for them. You simply remain. Completely present, completely still, completely unreadable. And in that stillness, that is the answer they don't know how to come back from.